It's live now. Hi there, roommate.
All right, game
We had
on.
somebody walk past.
For me?
Yep,
Oh.
Jeff is in the house. All right.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi dear, how are you?
Wonderful. So Facebook, we have Andrew Hangarter here. He's a Vegas comedian. He doesn't really call himself that, but he does comedy entertaining.
That's
And
true.
he's, how many years have you been doing comedy type entertaining?
20 years.
Well, see, he's a veteran. That's what this whole show is about. It's vetting out veterans. And he's been the foil for many an entertainer. He's willing to let them take puck shots at him.
Absolutely.
And you've opened for many entertainers, right?
That's true.
And so he's a lot of fun. I'm not clear on why you don't call yourself a comedian.
Because most of the time I'm just helping other comedians book acts. I actually have a hypnotist, Justin Trance, as a client. I have two magicians, Jason Powers and Tommy Wind. And so I assist with booking their acts. And I'm not an agent for any comedian, but I mean, like Shema Tosh is an incredibly successful, talented comedian here in town. And when she was doing the opening for the Penn and Teller Fool Us show over at the Rio last year, I was the foil for all of her stuff. I went to 14 consecutive shows, and we played the dating every time. I mean, but I was more than willing to be the person that she was able to pick on out of the audience, as though I was random. But actually, I just played extremely well with her.
Wow, that is so fun. That's a great thing to be doing here in Vegas. You probably get a lot of work doing this.
I could, yes. Mm-hmm. I just do various projects, and but I'm a huge fan of comedians, and also this worldwide audience that we're talking to. I have a client named Mike Favorman, and he has a very successful comedy cooking show, and I'm trying to get him on the Rachel Ray show, but they haven't been responding to my request. So if anybody here on the worldwide audiences can get in touch with Rachel Ray's bookers, Mike Favorman, and he calls it Pig's Kitchen, and it's just a very funny show, and I think it would be a great segment on Rachel Ray. So anyone listening knows Rachel Ray or somebody booking there, please help us out.
Wow, look at you. So you're kind of a promoter type.
Absolutely. Yes, I am.
So when did you first start getting the bug to be the foil or to be funny or to banter with people like on a professional level?
Oh, I've been a fan of comedians all the time, but I mean, just usually in the audience. And even back in the day, I used to have a place called the Hampton Beach Club on Long Island. And so I was like a local celebrity there. And so a lot of just famous people, a lot of whom were comedians, would come by the place. So it was, so I got to know them there. And now that I'm in Vegas, I go to great lengths to almost see everybody in town. And these guys all seem to know to pick on me. Like when Ray Romano and Brad Garrett were doing a show, they picked on my girlfriend, and that became a very regular part of their routine.
How fun is that? Have you written a book about your life?
No, people have asked me to write a book. It's called Andy Hangarter, Fact or Fiction, because as we go along here, some of the stories you're going to hear, and maybe they're not all true, but most of it is.
I want to hear them all.
Okay, so here's an example of something that happened to me, and it's true. As I used to be a casino executive for Caesars. And every year you have to go down to the basement of Caesars to get your gaming license. And it's a course with 20 questions on it. And you're not allowed to get any of the questions wrong. And if you miss a question, you then have to watch a 20-minute video explaining to you why the answer is this, that, and the other thing. And so I do that every year. It's down in the catacombs of Caesars. So now when you're done, everybody doesn't leave at the same time. I walk around. I don't know how to get out of there. So I just get on a service elevator. I get on the service elevator, I get off, and I'm surrounded by the Secret Service. So, and I'm in a suit and tie, and I got my Caesars badge on and all that kind of stuff. But the Secret Service is now surrounding me. So everyone's looking down. So I figure Obama must be in the house for some type of fundraiser. Now, the amazing thing that happens is that same elevator I was just on opens up, and now Obama is standing right next to me. And so I instantly try to think of something nice to say. And I say, a friend of mine is one of your biggest supporters. She even volunteers for you. He said, what does she do? I said, she's unemployed, but she doesn't blame you. Well, the Secret Service just laughed hysterically loud. Obama wasn't happy and just took off. And it was the next day I had to meet with the president of Caesars because it's like, what are you doing?
Wow.
But it wasn't planned. I had no idea I was going to be seeing Obama, and I was anyway. But the Secret Service, I mean, they didn't just snicker. They laughed incredibly. I think they're trained not to, but they laughed incredibly hard. So
That's
that was
so funny.
Mhm.
Who else have you, what other stories do you have that are crazy that people don't believe?
Okay. Do you know who Tony Robbins is? Motivational speaker?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've worked for Tony on and off for 40 years. So this day is in Fiji, okay? And inside this, there's only 12 people in this resort in Fiji. And there's a long table, and we're actually getting a guy who's going to become the president of Costa Rica, and we're helping him line up his campaign. And so Tony has ahead of time prepared this video presentation about how Michael Jackson and Phil Collins, how they reach people emotionally, a little John F. Kennedy Jr., and all sorts of very impressive people, and how they can emotionally get people to be excited about their cause. And so if you remember in the early 90s, what would happen when you turn the VCR after you've done your presentation?
It'd rewind?
No, whatever happened to be on TV would just pop up. I mean,
okay.
When you turn it off the VCR, boom. And so here I've got 12 the guy, the head of the W.G. Grace Company, Newt Gingrich's head guy, and so forth. And so Mikhail Gorbachev is the person sitting closest to the TV. And when the presentation's over, he goes to turn the TV off right there next to him when the Jerry Springer show pops up. And on the Jerry Springer show happens to be one of my bartenders from the Hamptons. And I, forgetting where I am and who I'm with and all that, I go, stop. And so now all these 12 are now watching the Jerry Springer show because I'm trying to figure out, why is my bartender on the Jerry Springer show? Turns out she's a psychiatrist, and she was just trying to prove the guy really did have whatever phobia or whatever it was. But I mean, here I've got 12. My job in that particular meeting was you need pen and paper, you need water. I was supposed to be invisible, and yet I've now stopped. Gorbachev jumps from the TV as he tried to turn it off. And so that's been a legendary, what could you be thinking?
Wasn't he the one that banged his shoes in the White House?
No, I think you're talking about
Khrushchev.
Yes, Khrushchev. That's fun. But it was just one of those. I frequently do fun, inappropriate things. I'm easily flustered, and so it's that I'm willing to play along.
Wow. So what are some other crazy things you've done?
Now, do you remember Kato Kalin from the OJ thing? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now, first, I want you to know that I was actually with OJ in Miami 3 weeks before and I was also there with Sean Penn, and we're at this nightclub. They're being paid because some of the people from Miami go to the Hamptons in the summer. It was one of this, just a promo thing, and we hire some of the Miami people to work. Anyway, OJ couldn't have been nicer. OJ got paid for 6 hours, actually worked 10 hours. He signed every autograph, every picture. He was the nicest human being. Meanwhile, Sean Penn was like herding cats. He would be gone smoking cigarettes 90% of the time. So if the two people, OJ was just phenomenal. I was so sorry to hear what eventually had come to pass. Now, what was the question again? Because the OJ thing is going to be coming. Kato. Okay, so you remember Kato Kalin from the, okay. So Kato Kalin's performing at the Orleans nightclub here in town. And somehow we just started hitting it off before he went on stage. And Kato had some great jokes. He talks about, I'm only famous for that one thing. And he says, but I got to go to the Playboy Mansion a lot. And what's great about Hugh Hefner is that he continued to consider me a top celebrity many years after the time that I was a top celebrity, but I still get invited to all the parties. He said, I want you to know you was really a great guy. He even gave handicap parking to flat-chested women. That was Kato's big
oh my gosh,
big joke. Let's see, what else are we going to talk about? But here in Vegas, the comedians can move from some of them do 10 minutes at one club and can run to the other and so forth. So it's a great place. There's actually too many comedy stores, but it is tremendous the amount of opportunity you could have if you wanted to get going.
Yes.
And that's what we mentioned off air. I think Don Barnhart is an absolute must that you should definitely. He has Jokesters Comedy Club, which was downtown and has now moved to Oyo, OYO, which used to be Hooters.
Yes.
So right next to the Tropicana. And so if you don't know Don Barnhart, then you're not part of the, and Don Barnhart goes with George Wallace, and they actually visit the troops on a regular basis, which is, over in Kuwait and stuff like that. So
That's
He-
amazing.
he's a great guy. And
I met Don Barnhart, and I came to one of his graduation shows, and I've written him quite a few. I've come to his jokesters, and I wrote him a few times to come on here.
Okay.
So if you could nudge him, I'm dying to have him on.
Once he sees the show, my God, he'll be.
Yeah.
The word will go forth. Someone who knows Don will have seen this interview and will say, Don, you must meet this young lady. So we'll just have to see what happens there. Let's see, I'm just taking a look at some of my notes here. Who knows?
Have you gone to entertain the troops?
No, I haven't. No, I have not. I'm totally supportive. Basically, I do humor that basically puts like, for example, you may not have seen me because I'm not on Match.com and I'm not on Tinder or Grindr. I'm on a service called USTA, USTA. I used to be athletic. I used to go on cruises. I used to be rich. I used to have a good job. And so that's where you can find me, is on USTA.
That's cool. Yeah.
Now, I'm 60 years of age. And the reason I personally get to have sex with 20 and 30-year-old unwed mothers.
Wow.
And you wonder, well, what charisma do I have? And it's because I won a contest. And now the curiosity is, what possible contest could you? Now, I didn't invent this concept. For example, if you want a trip to Jamaica or Hawaii or a cruise, and you're a 60-year-old, there's still some 20 and 30-year-old women would go out with you for that week on the cruise. But I didn't win anything quite that glamorous. I won from Martha Stewart Living, and I really did win this contest, diapers for a year. Now, being a single male, that really isn't that useful for most single males. However, I then went to Walmart and would look for young ladies who were shopping for diapers, and I would engage them in conversation about, how do I know which diapers to buy, And then I'd say, well, believe it or not, I can buy your diapers for you today. And I actually built relationships out of building rapport with them over diapers, and so I had $100. You had to turn the receipt in, you get your money back. And so that's actually a way I actually developed a relationship over time with a number of women, because what do single unwed mothers need? They need diapers, they need somebody to take them out to dinner, and they need babysitters. So I actually would actually let these women, go out on dates. I'd be the babysitter, and then I'd stay home with them after their dates.
And you never wound up on Chris Hansen for nothing.
Chris Hansen. That's true. Okay. Chris Hansen. I'm sorry.
He's the one that he busts people that are trying to get with young girls.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed that one.
That's funny. Your story's hilarious.
There you go.
With diapers. You're diapers.
Mm-hmm.
Did you used to enter contests for fun? Because I did. I've won some of the craziest contests.
Nope, I've never done any of those things. I like getting extra roles in movies and so forth. I was actually on the TV show Miami Vice in 1988. I became one of the detectives. My whole goal was just to be on one episode. I auditioned, I got hired, and I showed up. I sat there for 14 hours, and they didn't use me. I was, oh well. And 3 days later, after midnight, I get a call that tomorrow morning at 6:30, I want you at the West Palm Beach Airport. And it was like, I almost thought it was a crank call, but I went, and I had a 3-second scene where I had to do this, hit this door, and go through. I mean, so it was a da-da-da-da, and so that was a 3 seconds. Okay, so I thought, but I became dependable, and all of a sudden they were calling me every single week. And before you knew it, I was actually one of the detectives on the show. I mean, it's not a speaking part or anything like that, just part of it. One of the weeks, Melanie Griffith was the guest star. Okay, I didn't know Melanie from a hole in the wall, other than she was an attractive woman. And so the first day, I just sat down and put my tray, and I just started talking to whoever this person is. And I said, well, you're here in Miami, you should go to Joe Stonecrab. She said, why don't you take me? And so for 3 nights, I took Melanie Griffith out. And the point of it was that Don Johnson was pissed that first of all, Don didn't want her on. I don't know, no one's pulled me aside. I don't know who Melanie Griffith is. She's just a pretty girl. Okay, I hadn't known that they'd been married years before that and had a cantankerous divorce. Okay, he did not want her as the guest star on the show for that particular week, but she just filmed Working Girl. It hasn't come out yet, and they knew she was going to be a big name down the road. And so Don Johnson used to just hang out with us all the time. It was very fun. But during this particular week, he would go do his scene and run back to the trailer. He was just in a bad mood. But no one has pulled me aside and said, Don's pissed because Melanie is not available any of these evenings. And I knew nothing. I was not let in on it. Now, And so after 3 days of filming, whatever, I then National Enquirer, Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith back together. And it's the only time I've ever bought the National Enquirer. And so now I'm reading for the first time that they had this relationship. And every picture, though, that they're showing in National Enquirer, I literally was standing. I mean, so a scene of them kissing or holding, it was part of the show. I was literally like 4 feet from there when it was done. So I'm still thinking bullshit, bullshit. Am I allowed to say it? I'm whatever. And so I was totally surprised. Now, they then get remarried. And on the Phil Donahue show, they talked about what a great guy I was.
Wow.
How I had no idea that Don was.
That's crazy.
That was a funny story. There was a movie called My Blue Heaven with Steve Martin and Rick Moranis. Okay, I have a scene in that movie that's I created. It was lasted about 5 seconds, and I was waiting to do something, and this mother had this 5-year-old daughter, and she just really wanted to get her daughter into the movie somehow. And I said, okay, I'll take care of it. And there's a scene where they're leaving the ballpark in San Diego, and I just grabbed this. I said, you know how to skip? And we just went skipping out right through past Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, and it was and it's stuck in the movie. And so now the grand opening of this movie happened to be in East Hampton, Long Island. So Rick Moranis, they're all there at this opening for the movie, and the movie's going on. And 3/4 through the movie, there's my set, and the place just erupted because I'm very well known in the Hamptons. I was like a local, because up till then, Rick Moranis and Steve Martin would never know who I am. But I got like the loudest applause for my 3 or 4 seconds scene, whatever. It was fantastic.
Wow, that's so cool.
And Steve Martin has when I worked at Bellagio in the poker, I was the poker floor supervisor there. And Steve Martin, he put a baseball cap on and become invisible. I mean, absolutely, he had the baseball cap on and no one would know he was there at all. It was just, he had this amazing ability to just disappear. And one day, Martin Mull comes by and he says, I'm here to see the other Martin. So I hooked him up. And anyway, so ask me a question. I'll be glad to help you with something.
What is something that has eluded you in your life that you'd still love to do?
There you go. Well, I haven't gone body surfing in Hawaii in quite a while. Shame on me. I used to, Tony Robbins used to have something called Mastery University. And for 3 weeks every September, after the summer in the Hamptons, I would then go with Tony Robbins, and he'd have like 10,000 people there. And I would get there 2 days early and stay two extra days so I could go body surfing in Hawaii. But I got to meet some of the most interesting people in the world at these seminars. My
gosh. I really love Tony Robbins, you know, the power that he has to change lives.
He does tremendous. The last thing that happened this year in LA before everybody got shut down was Tony Robbins. He's February 29th is his birthday, which he's a leap year baby. So he was 60, and much of Hollywood. Anyway, I got to go to that. I flew over to LA to be at that event, and it was, let's see, Pitbull was the main act, and Melissa Etheridge. Here, I got okay, so here's, let's see, Kathy Buckley. Do you know that comedian, Kathy Buckley?
No.
Okay, so in 1989, the first ever Mastery University was in San Diego. And Mastery is where people pay like $10,000 and you get the best speakers in the world, just give you a half hour to an hour of their very best stuff. So John Gray will do relationships, and Colin Powell will be how to empower your neighborhood. Schwarzkopf would do leadership. I mean, just some very high powered, you know, very smart people, but they would just talk about, you know, what their area of expertise was, whether it be a doctor or an exercise physiologist or whatever. So I happen to have the job there of making sure that the speaker, if they had a videotape or if they had handouts, my job was to greet them. If they needed water, whatever they needed, food, I took care of the various speakers. So this is the very first Mastery ever. And I'm now meeting Deepak Chopra for the first time. Okay, and Deepak's going to close the first day's thing with meditation and whatever. And so I've told him how elegant, I've gone over who spoke all day, you know, when he's expected and so forth. So I now sit in the audience with Deepak Chopra, and comes on this comedian, Kathy Buckley. And Kathy Buckley opens with the 4 worst fart and fuck jokes you've ever heard in your life. I mean, just embarrassingly, oh my God. It's hard. And then she moved over and she goes, that's what people expected of me. I was diagnosed as being learning disabled. I'm actually just deaf. And then she went on to do the most elegant 1 hour of, you know, believing in life and so forth. She was actually run over as a child, her face, like she was a teenager, and a Jeep ran over her face. And she recovered. She had an out-of-body experience, like, do you want to live or do you want to die? She had that opportunity, and she chose to go back into her body. And anyway, it was like incredibly moving. I'd taken great notes all day. At the end of her presentation, I had absolutely no tape, and everybody was just crying, but it was very uplifting. So Kathy Buckley is just a tremendous person, and she's done a lot of charity work with Tony Robbins over the years. And she was actually one of the entertainers at his birthday party. That's why I brought her on. And,
wow. So is she a comedian or?
Yes, she's and she's got to be over 60 years of age because Tony just turned 60, and she talked about how much. So she's probably 67 or something like that. But she does a lot of work with different children's camps and uplifting a lot of people. So I don't know how often she gets to do stand-up, but she was, I hadn't seen her in years, but it was the most embarrassing opening. I mean, she started with 4 jokes that just would make you cringe. And it was like, oh my God, this is horrible. How's that happen? And then she just moved over 3 steps. That's what people expected of me. Whatever. It was just a very impactful, that you're not always the product of your environment.
That's very poignant, because a lot of times that's what they do expect out of comics, whether we're male or female. They expect just,
Understand, but she was just totally motivational, totally a very much a moving experience.
I'll have to catch that.
That's Kathy Buckley is her name. Just to repeat.
Yes. So what kind of things did you have in the works before the shutdown happened that are on hold right now?
Oh, it's heartbreaking. Here in Las Vegas, there's a Mexican restaurant called Ricardo's, which has been here for 40 years. And I went there like if you were going to visit me for a couple of days, Ricardo's would be one of the places it's a Mexican restaurant where even with a margarita it would cost you $15 or $20. The meal was great and everything. And they're closing because of this. And one of my comedians was going to go, one of my magicians, Jason Powers, was going to do table-to-table magic there. And the shutdown not only stopped that opportunity, but the whole, the restaurants, I mean, it's just shocking. It's a family restaurant. It's been there forever. And it's very, very, very disappointing that happened. Yeah. And my hypnotist, Justin Trance, is working on doing something that you can do because who knows how large the audience is. He's going to try to do more internet types of things than live in-person appearances. So I think that's going to be true for many entertainers coming up.
Yes, definitely.
Because when are they going to let us fill the audiences and the stages again? I do not know.
Yes. Well, you're quite the pro that's been around the business and done a lot of things. I'm so glad that I picked out your picture and said, this guy looks like he has a story. I had no idea what your specialty inside of entertainment was. You're so fascinating.
And my other claim to fame is in 1985, I hosted the first ever MTV Beach Party. That was my idea. And MTV wanted nothing to do with it. And so I paid for the time on the Long Island part of MTV. And it was one of the huge success stories. I got 6 letters from MTV afterwards, 5 saying it's the best independently seen promotion they'd ever seen. A 6 was a cease and desist for not using their logo correctly. But I don't even think he was correct. But it was, I mean, like the band Kiss showed, I mean, all sorts of famous musicians, White Snake, Paul Simon was my neighbor there. Whatever. It was a huge to do, and I wish I got more credit for it.
Totally.
That was the Neptune Beach Club in 1985, and all these.
I hope you come out with a book.
There you go.
I'll buy your first copy. Okay.
And thank you very much. That's good to count on. Oh, there's also somebody else you should get in touch with. Her name is Enya, N-I-N-O-N, and she does a weekly show from the Pepper Mill here in Las Vegas. Her show is called Vegas Live with Enya, and she does a very nice show. And really the value of it is that you put your clients on it, and then they use that particular interview on their own websites and stuff like that. I put Krista Kay, who's a very tall comedian. Have you met Krista Kay?
Yes, I love her.
I put her on that show and some other people. Anyway, they're going to start doing that again, thank God, because that's been shut down for the last 8 weeks or so.
Is Enya, is she the one that lets you sit on a big couch and
Yeah,
interviews? Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that.
No, she does a fantastic interview, but she, like Larry King, actually goes out of her way not to know who she's interviewing ahead of time. She draws your story out of you, and then she finds out. And so I've had some, and because I consistently give her good guests, she lets me. She doesn't like screen them ahead of time. It's like, okay, he's 6 for 6, he's 7 for 7. We'll give him another shot. So I've done politicians. There's someone named Drina Freed, whose grandmother was Taylor Caldwell, the novelist. I don't know who actually King of Kings, or what it was, the first actual before Roots. It was the first one of those segments where they went on for a week on ABC, that kind of thing. So Taylor Caldwell. And what's interesting is those books are maybe 100 years old now, but I listen to the audit. It's just amazing. The issues a lot of times are the same thing, and she has a lot of insight 100 years ago.
Wow. So this is our first, I'm 69 years old. So this is my first pandemic.
Oh, right.
I don't remember the influenza of 1918, but it happened a few years before me. So we didn't come with a manual, Andrew, on how to get through a pandemic and stay sane. So it is
brutal. I mean, I missed March Madness. I'm a sports fan. So for me, with no sports going on and so forth, and yet I've actually stayed so busy. There's 4 books I want to read, and I still haven't read the first chapter yet. I've been learning about alkaline water. Have you ever heard of Kangen alkaline water? Well, I now bought a system for myself, and I'm telling other people, because I really think the key during this pandemic is to have as strong immune system as possible. And most people are too acidic because we have a sugar-based diet and what have you. So I highly recommend that you look into alkaline water to balance out some of you, especially if you know anybody that has like gout or diabetes or some types of cancer. Most of them are just too acidic. And I think way too many people are fearing this stuff. And I'm all for Vegas opening up and the world opening up. I mean, the percentage of people that actually die is like under 1%. So it's like, it's time to get on with the real world.
Time to get on with it. It's starting to reopen, and that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we definitely do that. Yes.
What's something that you're a sports, I saw that you are a sports bettor. You're not ashamed of saying that you're a sports bettor. Some people hide it.
No, it's, I can't think of the guy's name now, but the guy was on Jeopardy I can't believe I can't think. He was spectacular. I mean, he was such a good representative for sports betting and so forth. And one of the questions was, what's the most you ever lost in a day? And he said, $20,000, but only 10 since I've been married.
Well, when I was growing up, Andrew, my dad would gamble. And, he'd have a bookie on each phone. He had 2 phones, one for each bookie. And he also would fabricate the truth. And he'd say that he broke even all the time. And so I'd go to school in the morning, and when my dad would break even, I'd come home and the house was empty. I think it's where I got my humor from.
Well, there's nothing worse than losing, because when you lose, you bet too much, and when you win, you didn't bet enough. I mean, without question. One of the things I highly recommend if you're visiting Vegas, at Westgate Casino, they have a whole theater where Barry Manilow plays. But on Sunday, they have these enormous 3D screens. So you can literally, where the referees are trying to see was the guy inbounds or out of bounds. Here in Vegas, we know 12 minutes before they did, oh, he was clearly inbounds or he was clearly out of bounds. And here in Vegas, you can also bet during the games. So, which is just a great opportunity. And so I'm sitting there with my phone, and changing my bets or increasing my bet, or what. That's one of the things I truly enjoy the most. So,
who are some of your favorite teams to bet on?
No, it's not like that anymore. I mean, for example, when I was young, I just loved watching Joe Namath and the Jets. And then when I moved to San Diego, Dan Fouts and the Chargers. I even had season tickets to the game. But right now, I mean, it's more about the matchups and some of the individual players and so forth. When you're betting on the games, you can easily bet against your favorite team or whatever, because all about circumstances, situations, indoor, outdoor, who had the fly the long. There's all sorts of factors as to but I'm a huge NFL fan. And so I actually literally at the Westgate watch almost every game. So I am up to date. And sometimes a game you're not even concentrating on, but you can just sense the energy. Wow, that team is really trying. And so that's when you can bet on the game right in the middle. Wasn't going to bet that team before, but now they really are going for it. And a lot of times you can pick up on that before the numbers change. So it's,
Wow.
yeah, I enjoy doing it.
I'm a huge NFL and a huge college, sports girl.
Sure.
I
Very
love
nice.
it. And NASCAR.
Yep.
You ever go up to NASCAR and watch that?
Right. They have it here in Vegas. And it was probably 4 years ago when I last went, but it's so much faster in person. I mean, it's just shocking. You watch it on TV and it's like amazing when it's just one time around, and I don't want to see a crash. I mean, it's just, they're just going so much faster than you can believe. And it's kind of like in real life, Susan Lucci is, she was Erica and All My Children. Well,
Yeah.
She used to be a customer at my restaurant, and she's really only about this big in real life. And then I'd have to watch the show again and be, she looks like she's much bigger on the TV screen. The same thing with NASCAR. The speed is just unbelievable. And then I highly recommend, absolutely seeing an event like that in person. It's kind of like also ice hockey. You want to go to an ice hockey match is so much better in person than on TV. Now, the NFL is actually better on TV than it is in person, but such is life.
Really?
Yes.
How come is that?
It's just the NFL football is made for TV. I'm just saying you get to see replays, you get to see different angles and stuff like that. It's just amazing that the NFL is actually a great TV game, whereas the intensity of hockey is better in person. You just really get it. Even if you're not really a hockey fan, you get your emotions going quite high.
Are you rooting for the Raiders?
Oh, I am thrilled that the Raiders are here in town, and I'm an NFL fan, because I think what it's going to do for this town is, if you live in Green, everybody in the back of their mind wants to go to Vegas sometime. Okay. And so if you live in Green Bay and the Packers are going to be playing October 11th, because 6 months out, so it's that trip where you've been meaning to go. And so you're going to go that week when the Packers are here, there's a whole bunch of teams where they only get to come to Vegas every 6 years. And people know that. And it's like, so, okay, let's save up. That's when we're going to Vegas. So it's going to be great when up and down the strip, whoever happens to, if it's the Packers, they'll all be in green. If the Steelers will be in black. So I think it's going to be great for Vegas to have all these people, come from out of town and the enthusiasm. I do not expect the Raiders to actually have a home field advantage. I think more than half the field will be filled with people rooting for the other team. So, but
You're right there, because this is a destination place.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, sometimes you just need a little bit of, this is a Tony Robbins thing, leverage. You just need a little bit of leverage to make the difference between, when you want, especially when the team won't be back here for another 6 years. It's like, okay, it's got to go now, or I have to wait 6 years, so if you have the money, and sometimes you just need a kick in the butt as to why, I want to go to Vegas sometime. Hey, let's do it that week when they're here. Here's another betting tip for you. It's like when there's a big fight in town, whether it be MMA, UFC, boxing, or whatever. They're big gamblers, and they go, and a lot of people bet like $1,000 on a fight, which means half the people will leave the fight having won $1,000. Okay, then they go to the poker table, and they're not nearly as good a poker player as I am. So it's a huge advantage if you can, be at a poker table when the fight lets out, and these people because they're not that worried about that $1,000. They're willing to spend it far more freely. It's not like their paychecks involved now. It's this bonus $1,000 they have, and plus they might even include alcohol with that. So your leverage and your chances are much greater when the some alcohol and money is involved.
That's a great tip. Thank you, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Where would you like people to follow you on the internet?
I just have my Facebook page, Andrew Hangarter. The spelling's right up there, Hangarter.
Yeah.
And I love entertaining people when they come from out of town and show them what's happening and so forth. And unfortunately, I am the opposite of social distancing. I mean, I'm about bringing people together. I go to a bunch of different networking groups. Like a guy named Bruce Marin has a group that meets every 2 weeks he has guest speakers, and it's a lot of fun. And sometimes you meet someone at that one, and then you go to another networking group, and it's like, well, this person would never meet this other person. I'm going to promote another guy. His name is Neil Portnoy. He's a fabulous artist. He used to be he was a pitcher at the University of Miami when I was a pitcher at Stetson University in Florida, way back when. But this guy is tremendously talented as far as an artist, and he does mostly sports figures and celebrities. Neil Portnoy. And I met him from one networking group, and then I was able to introduce him to some other people. And it's true. For example, at one of the networking groups, a guy had no idea why he was there. He was dragged there, and he had just retired from the DMV. And where everybody else is promoting their book or their product or whatever, he says, well, I don't know how I can help you, but if you ever need help filling out your stuff for the DMV, I'll be glad to help you. Well, I had another friend who sold used cars, and he loved going to auctions and finding a car and being able to fix it up and make it worth more money. But the part of the job he hated was going to the DMV and having to transfer the plates and the tags and all that. And so I introduced the two of them together, and it became a part-time job for the. Now, you know, the other guy doesn't really wait in line at the DMV. Hey, Charlie's here. He bangs it out on the computer for. He has to work like 2 or 3 minutes, make 20 or 30 bucks, and then he goes out to lunch with one of his friends. But so networking is really, I think, a key to success in life. So
you're all about everything you've mentioned is some type of networking.
Absolutely, yes. So I'm the opposite of social distancing. So this is not my time.
No. So if you want to tell people what they can do to make it through the rest of this pandemic, what would be a wise tip you could give?
Well, number one is fill out the census form online, or else you're going to get 100 more letters about it. But you do want to be counted, and But the other thing is, once you start filling out the census form, you don't get to stop. So so don't plan on doing 5 minutes today and 5 minutes tomorrow. Once you do it, just go for it. Find some interesting book to read and actually commit to putting a certain amount of time into reading the book. I actually been watching on TV. Let's see, Pain. Let's see, the story about the doctor in New York. What's it, Royal Pains or whatever? It was a great story in the Hamptons where they. Anyway, the whole series has been. I've been watching that on Netflix. Just choose something and commit to it, because there's certainly some very interesting stories are really the key. Is if you can find interesting stories, and I'm promoting Kangen alkaline water now. I've been drinking that. And it's I really think having as strong immune system as possible. So even if you're not getting out, I'm not saying you have to jump with but you're still doing walking or jogging, and it's almost time to get into the pool again, which is great.
That alkaline water is really great. The machine costs maybe $5,000, but you can buy gallons of it some places for $3 to $5.
That's correct. Yep. There's there's one in Boulder City, one in Henderson, and one in Sahara and Buffalo. But yes, the Kangen water machine itself costs $5,000. I bought one, and I'm pleased with it, because then you really do get the freshest of waters instantly. And so I'm glad.
You feel the difference. What's that?
I stepped it up and bought one. Yes.
Good for you. Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your life. Is there anything that you've left unsaid that you'd like to say?
I'm sure I'll think of it as soon as we tune out.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew Baumgartner. It's been so nice to have you on.
Thank you much. Thank you for calling me. It's all good. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everybody's talking at the coming spot.